there was one other thing that I wanted to go over. I found a very interesting video, and I actually almost went through this on the last stream, but decided to wait until this stream because the last stream, uh, let's see, didn't really have time on the last stream to go through it. But I found this article, or not article, is a video about Turning Points USA. They were doing their road show. They go to various colleges and all that kind of thing. I thought that it was kind of a good insight into what they, at Turning Points USA, a conservative organization, thinks about their own arguments. The video title is British Leftist Student Tells Charlie Kirk Facts Are Unfair. First of all, conservatives have no idea what leftist means. They don't know what most of the political ideologies actually mean. As far as they're concerned, if you're a Democrat, that means you're a socialist, which means you're a communist, which means you're a leftist, which means whatever. They don't know. They don't know. Most of them don't care.
Hello. Sorry if I'm not as articulate as I could be. It's weird to see you guys in person. I am kind of interested in the wordplay.
Are you able to hear this, by the way?
Most of you online, but also Candace. I'm afraid I have nothing to ask, but specifically Charlie. A lot of the wordplay you use, and a lot of the sources that you draw on, like the statistics, you're very good at just ramping off statistics and throwing them into the person that you're arguing. I was wondering, where do you collect your sources, and do you make them easily accessible?
Of course. Would you like to name an example that I can cite for you now?
I don't question that the things that you're saying are factual. It's more how they are phrased and how they are put to us.
Right. So what he's talking about here is, of course, the type of, when someone gives you a statistic, right? They give you a statistic and they say, well, it turns out that 100% of this, 100% of this happens to be this, and this means that XYZ. So he's talking about, in general, how they put forth their statistics.
So, for example, the thing that you've just said now about abortion, could you quickly remind me so I don't trip over my own
Sure,
words?
I'll do the first one. I say, a celebration of a pregnancy, why do we call that event a baby shower, not a fetus shower?
Right, so...
First of all, nobody cares what they actually call it. You're not using medical terms when you're talking about something that's social like that. I mean, that's just, that point is dumb, honestly, anyway, so, but, we'll see what he says.
That in itself sounds like, oh, right, well, that means there's a cultural acceptance of the idea that it's a baby pre-birth, but that's just a linguistic, cultural way. So I call it, I'm pro-choice,
right,
for example, but I would still call it a baby shower. That doesn't mean I culturally accept the idea that it's a baby pre-birth. I'm just using a linguistic standard.
There's deeper meaning, though. Let's play this out. It's fun. So if the individual that has the baby shower...
Well, there's a deeper meaning if you decide that there's a deeper meaning, right? I mean, if you've decided that this social thing that is never connected to abortion, because it's typically you are already pregnant as the woman, and it is a celebration of, hey, you're about to give birth to a baby. This is, saying that there's a deeper significance behind it. I mean, there's a deeper significance behind it if you decide that there is, and of course Charlie Kirk decides that there is.
Or decides right after the baby shower to have an abortion, what is that inside of her called?
I don't want to do this, if that's all right. I don't want to do abortion.
I know, but you see all of a sudden your argument
can I use a
blows
different
up?
example if abortion is kicking up too much dust?
Say that again.
Can I use a different example
Sure,
of a fact?
that's fine,
Okay,
that's
so
fine. Perfectly fine.
the first thing I saw with you in was your political debate with Hassan.
Yeah.
That was the first thing I saw of you. And you said, you'll probably still remember it, but it was that the worst 10 cities in America were run by
Democrats.
Ah, yes. So this is the whole Democratic cities meme. That I find this among almost all Republicans. They will talk about cities as if they are, American cities, as if they're terrible places, and they're full of problems and crime and drugs and this and that and the other, and just over and over again about how they're terrible places. And the reason, or at least the implied reason, that Republicans generally give is, well, because they're Democrats, and they have Democrat policies, whatever that means. They are much less inclined to compare places that are poor, that are in rural areas, like, say, West Virginia, Joe Manchin's state, which has a terrible opioid epidemic, one of the worst in terms of opioid epidemic. They're one of the poorest states in the country, and but West Virginia is not that populous in terms of population density. There's really only a few cities that are even like decent sized cities. There's like a handful of cities, maybe, but none of those cities are particularly big, at all. Um, and so that the argument kind of breaks down quickly. But then if you say, like, well, what are the places with the most murders? Like, well, of course it's going to be cities. That's where most people live anyway. So the other murders that are in other places that are in less populated places are going to be spread out. Whereas if you've got millions of people living in a city, you've got like 8 million people in New York City or whatever it is, and that's a significant chunk of the whole population. That's like a couple percent of the entire population of this country, like a few percent of the population almost. So of course there's going to be a high percentage of murders and a high percentage of whatever you want to talk about there. So, little misleading.
Yeah, the poorest, most murderous. Yeah.
Right. So I looked it up because I wanted to read up on it, and there wasn't a source in the video mirror I'd seen, and that was correct. But it was also correct that of the top 10 cities, most of them were Democrat, and across the board, on average, most cities are Democrat.
Right. And so this is where this comes from. Like this whole cities are Democrat and cities are all failing and blah blah blah. But yet this is also where a huge amount of the wealth that is generated is in as well as cities.
So the fact that you took it out of the entirety of the fact, which is that most cities are Democrat, the top best cities are Democrat, and the worst cities are Democrat, and you chose to only say that the worst cities are Democrat.
Top best cities are Democrat?
Well, so he means the most he means the wealthiest.
In the same way that, yeah. So the study that I found that mirrored your statistic said that.
So cities tend to be more, urban areas tend to be more to the left, just as they are. But when Republican mayors are actually allowed the chance to govern,
Yeah, right. The results are remarkable when it's a chance to go. So I give Charlie some credit here for admitting that yes, this was it looked like Candace wasn't even going to give that to him. It looked like Candace was going to argue that and be like, well, no, that's actually not the case. But Charlie Kirk is like, okay, well, yeah, that is true, I guess. And then but then he said something about, oh, well, when Republican policies are followed,
results are remarkable. And so let's juxtapose cities versus states, or even if you want to extrapolate what my argument was really talking about. In the laboratory of democracy theory, which we all believe in, which is when certain states are allowed to have juxtaposed policies and contrast against each other, you see huge differences. So the most prosperous, most job-creating, most entrepreneurial states are ones with Republican governors and low tax, low regulation type policies. And there is a correlation between the most murderous, the most dangerous, and the most honestly hopeless areas, and Candace grew up in one of them, are almost always dominated by Democrats.
Yeah, so, and this also, he's kind of, now he's throwing in states, because this is also very convenient for him when he's making this argument, because if you were to find a city that maybe is a little bit more Republican, or maybe is doing more or less better than whatever point it is he's trying to make, he can then pivot and say, well, okay, the city of whatever, let's say LA or something like that in California, or San Diego. Let's say San Diego or something like that. It's a Democrat-run city, but or maybe it's a Republican-led. Maybe say it was Republican-led. Okay, say San Diego has a Republican mayor, and if the city is not doing well on whatever type of scale he's talking about, he can then pivot and say, well, Gavin Newsom is the governor of California, so I'm just going to say, he'll just say, well, they would be doing well, except their governor's Democrat. Yeah, there's always a way around this, and the more layers you layer on top of that too, you can even say, well, the president is Joe Biden, and even though it's a Republican city with a Republican governor, then even because Joe Biden's inflationary blah 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 policy, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, there's always a way around this, and if you can always dump it on whatever Democrat is in charge at whatever level. So it's interesting.
But when those Republican policies are actually allowed to be instituted, those communities turn around quite quickly. So.
And another one was that you said, I think it was the life expectancy in Cuba was 15 years lower than that in the United States.
Yeah, if the government doesn't kill you, right.
Right, democide. But I looked it up as well, and I found there was no information on that. And in fact, the Google definition, which draws on, it cites many different studies, and it fills it all in and it pulls it all together, and it chooses the most reasonable response that's backed up by facts and logic. It said that it was actually a year older than the US. So how do you, especially
point.
When you're, like, I think it's called galloping, when you're throwing so.
Gish galloping is what that is, and a lot of people in debates do it. It's not a great tactic. Not something that I want to employ, but yeah, this kind of thing, like being caught in a lie. Let's see how he tries to get out of this.
So many points in a debate. Do you not think it's unfair and unreasonable, and maybe at points even manipulative, to be phrasing things in a certain way that might be, when beyond scrutiny, it's like me who had to Google all of these statistics, which pan out to be not as obtrusive and anti-left as you say they.
I think he's being too nice here, and I think that is blunting his argument a little bit. It's not blunting his argument, but it's blunting the effect that he could be having here to the listeners, because he's being very deferential and like, well, I don't know if this is as blah blah blah. He should say, like, it turns out this is false, and do you think that that's an issue, that you're giving information that's false or in a way that appears to be intentionally misleading? I think he probably could have been a little stronger there.
Yeah. Do you not think that's at the worst incompetent, and at the best incompetent, and at the worst malicious?
So you're entitled to your own opinion, not entitled to your own facts. Let's talk about the Cuban one. I reject the own Cuban government's health statistics completely and totally. I don't believe the socialist governments of Cuba's health statistics that they submit to the World Health Organization or the United Nations, because objective, independent analysis of their own health standards are nearly 20 to 30 years behind life expectancy that their own.
Okay, so he's saying. So this is very strange, because he says he rejects their findings. So he rejects the findings of the Cuban government for what their own statistics are. But he also says that the official results are it's actually 20 to 30 degrees less than the official results. And since that guy is saying, he's saying in his experience, it looks like Cuba was only like a year ahead of the United States, so it was like, what, late 70s, I think, is the average life expectancy in the U.S. at the moment, something like that. And so he's saying that they're somewhere between high 50s and high 40s, if it's 20 to 30 degrees less than that. And that's not even what the statistic he cited. The statistic he cited was apparently 65. The statistic that Charlie Kirk previously cited was apparently 65, which is only like 12 years less. So what is it? Is it 12? Is it 20? Is it 30? Like, okay, great. You don't accept what the Cuban government says about life expectancy, and I don't necessarily blame him for that. I don't know that I would put a very big bet on Cuba being completely truthful about that either. However, you can't just make stuff up and then decide that that is more credible than whatever you say Cuba's doing. You say Cuba's making up statistics, well, it kind of looks like you're just making up statistics too.
Government produces. So what you're looking at is corroborated by people that want it to be true. And we can have a 30-minute discussion over whether you believe the Cuban health statistics, but the answer is show me another statistic of anything I've talked about in the 300 hours that Candace and I have done, public speaking. Everything I talk about, everything I do is rooted in years of research and backing and data, and I'm happy to talk about each specific one. I don't want to monopolize the time here, but I reject the premise and the insinuation that somehow I'm being reckless, because facts are not reckless. In fact, it's the basis of why we're here and why what we believe.
You successfully pivoted away from the intention of my question, which wasn't the factual.
Very good. You pointed, if someone is pivoting, it is good to call that out and try to redirect if you can.
Nature of the statements you were saying, it's right. The way that you phrased them.
So I phrased them effectively, and that should be a problem?
No, it's not about effectively as defined by you, as in it promotes
your
agenda.
Said so you pivoted quickly away from the abortion thing.
Can I please finish my... Huh?
Happy to, yeah.
I pivoted away from the abortion thing, not because I didn't want to talk about it, but because it made me uncomfortable to do so.
Do you think do you think it's effective the way I worded it, because maybe it made you think a way you never had to think before? The point is, I could do this for every issue.
It's more that, so you say we shouldn't trust the Cuban health statistics because they've got an agenda to promote, and that probably makes a lot of sense. But similarly, there are people whose prime objective, as if they're still stuck in McCarthyism, is to obliterate any form of socialism and communism as an opposition to free market capitalism. And so, similarly, in the same way that we shouldn't trust the authorities in Cuba.
Right. Yeah. See, his point was perfect there. This is exactly right. He's saying that why would we then just be able to, even if you don't trust Cuba, why should we trust you when your statistics don't seem to be based on anything either? Like that doesn't really seem great. And now of course Candace jumps in and she tries to say, well, we'll see what she says in a second. I don't recall I don't even think I got this far in the video before. So this is, I think this is new to me.
If at the root of this is capitalism versus socialism, is there an example where socialism is really thriving and worked as a concept? This is what I don't understand. It's weird to me when people come up.
Yeah, see, she saved him from that because I don't know what he would have said. It would have been nice to know what he said about that 65-year life expectancy. Where did he come up with that?
Up to this discussion, and it's like at your core, you're just defending socialism, defending Cuba, defending. What are you defending?
That's not the root of my question.
I get what you're saying is he phrasing things in a way that maybe aren't fair because you could find something on the internet that maybe supports communism and socialism.
That's not what he says at all. That's a very dumb take.
So that's essentially what you're saying, right?
No, you're mischaracterizing me, actually.
Okay, how am I mischaracterizing you?
You're mischaracterizing me because you've generalized what I'm saying, which is that.
And so now this is the whole rabbit hole of well, you're arguing, in bad faith, or you're arguing, she's just trying to right now what she's doing is just completely muddy the water, so there will be nothing gained out of this conversation, it seems like.
I've looked into talking points that Charlie's raised. I found the exact studies that he's referenced and know that they do because they actually mirror the things that he's said verbatim.
So they're cited.
And
So I do use studies, is what you're saying.
I never said you didn't, Charlie.
I'm not sure where you're coming from.
That's why I'm saying I'm not mischaracterizing you. I get what you're saying. You're saying, Charlie, he's saying that you say facts, but there are also alternative facts that would maybe present socialism and communism in a better way.
It's unfair because of the way he's saying them, not because of.
Because from what I'm getting, you're saying that he's using.
Yeah, see, and the guy is talking about specific facts, and saying that these people from Turning Points USA have a vested interest in making sure that these countries look as bad as possible. And then Candace Owens is coming back and saying, oh, so you're just defending socialism, which of course has nothing to do with what he's saying. And even the the title of the video, the British leftist student tells Charlie Kirk facts are unfair. This alone tells you that this is really not a genuine argument on their part.
Called a debate.
Yeah, essentially what you're saying is he's too good at presenting his argument. Because you're saying, let me finish. You've just said, you went and looked over the things that Charlie said, you found them to be backed by studies, which would mean they were factual, so he's not lying, he's not mischaracterizing or using wrong data. Let me finish, you've been allowed to talk for a while now. And then, but the way he presents him in an argument when you say he's galloping may maybe make his opponent afraid to talk, or I don't know what it does
basically
to them.
wants
However,
to argue with himself.
The bottom line is you're saying Charlie's using facts. I don't get how that can be a disagreement.
Well,
that Charlie uses facts in his arguments.
You're saying that he's not presenting other facts that would defeat his debate.
Yeah.
So you're basically saying he should do also the job of Charlie Kirk and whoever's debating him.
No, so so what they're saying here, they're all, for one thing, they're all dogpiling him because they're like they're all starting to speak like against him, so they're all just gonna throw all kinds of things out at him, and they're basically, it's interesting because it's like a Gish Gallop, except it's with 4 different people doing it at once, as opposed to like one person galloping. It's like a whole bunch of people galloping. Kind of interesting.
In the same time, that's essentially what you're saying, is that Charlie should say, okay, you should look at a socialist country and say Venezuelan people are killing their pets to eat food, etc. However, in this situation, they had really good weather and it was sunny, etc. I don't understand how you want him as one side of the. Yeah, I'm going to finish.
And by the way, another good use of this time would have been if you actually had the alternate facts and just debated Charlie.
Just said yes instead.
While you were here, as opposed to debating the concept.
There's no point having your own
Charlie should be
opposition
debating
without actually giving the facts yourself to come and debate, rather than saying he uses facts too well.
Yeah, final point, and I'll let my attorneys answer the rest of the question.
Again, you've mischaracterized what I'm truly saying here, which is that you're not trying to genuinely convince people. You seem to be, from the presentation of the facts that I've given you as an example, phrasing truths in a very specific way and choosing to ignore things that present it in a more balanced way to basically trick people, right? That's no. Please let me finish. 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 Can I finish? Please let me finish.
They argue their opinion.
Look.
Right, but if what you're saying is so misleading that it doesn't stand up to any scrutiny, like I wouldn't even want, at least for me, if I'm having an argument with somebody, I don't want that to be the reason that, like, I don't want that to be part of my argument. If my argument is so weak that it falls apart under the slightest scrutiny, I don't even want that. But of course, it's fine for them.
Fact. No, seriously. Hear me out, man.
Facts are unfair.
Facts, right? Facts don't care about your feelings, right? Facts are objective statehoods, right? But the way that you choose to present them, right? It's like saying if a statistic is 68%, you can't just rearrange the 68 to say 86, right? Hear me out, because that is just lying.
You could rearrange it to say 32, no? You could rearrange it to say 32.
That's not a very good argument on his part. He could have done better with that one. What he should be saying something like, well, if this is true 68% of the time, and make it some like huge outstanding statistic, like you then can say, oh, well, it turns out that it's 88% the rest of the time. It's, you'd have to construct it in such a way that, and it's very hard to do on your feet. And he's doing a really good job, by the way, overall, in this little 4-on-1 debate. He's actually doing a great job in holding his own. But yeah, this part isn't really the strongest part, I think.
The other way around. Those are both factual statements. If you say 68%...
Do I need the mic? I can hear me. Oh, sure. The way that you're choosing to talk about statistics, the things that you're choosing to neglect that present things in a more balanced way, indicates that your objective here isn't to convince people based on the whole truth, but in fact to play off of people's inability to quickly respond by asking for sources. Like if you provided a source,
Correct. And he says historically to articulate this, but he did articulate it perfectly there. He did articulate. He said that is exactly what they're doing.
I'm struggling to articulate this, but it's just with the example I gave you about the Democrat cities, right? That's a pretty condemning statistic that the worst cities, to summarize, are mostly Democratic.
Yeah,
but you didn't present the whole statistic, and that was a very purposeful choice. If you look up that study,
Charlie's not going to debate himself. I don't this is very
because
confusing
it's not
to
a game,
me.
Candace, is
But
it?
no,
It's
but
not
you
a
just
game.
said when he goes on campuses and he debates with people that he's not presenting facts that would try to destroy the fact that he just gave. That's the
No, they're the
concept of a
same
debate.
facts, Candace. I don't see what you're
That's
not
why it's
understanding
called,
here.
And Candace Owens she's the worst. I mean, she I actually have much more respect for what Charlie was doing in this than I do for what Candace is trying to do. Candace is basically trying to just protect Charlie Kirk, and Candace Owens is essentially just saying that it's okay to put forth an argument that is just based on that is solely based on a statistic that is very, very misleading. And I don't think that's really a place that you want to be in. I think even Charlie Kirk knows he does not want to be in a position where he is seen as doing this. And yet Candace is saying, well, no, it's perfectly okay that he does this. And what this the British guy is saying is right. It's not a game. And that's why it is important to talk about these things.
That's what it's called, a debate.
Because it's not about the point of a debate. If you care about humanity, if you care about improving people's welfare, should be to present objective facts based on independent studies and decide which is what Charlie does, but choosing to neglect the entirety of the factual statement.
Okay, I think this is now turning into a Yelp review of Charlie Kirk, and I'm not really getting
because
the
he's
point
an
of it.
influential man, and his practices and everyone's practices need to be
but I'm
scrutinized,
saying
and
that
yours
this
are
is-
semantically
I wish
deceitful.
you actually I wish you actually would just debate Charlie. That would I think would be more productive
in closing,
for everybody
I
here.
do appreciate you coming up and saying this. I will issue a challenge to the world. Anyone can come prepared with any hundreds of pages of documents to debate me, and I wish them well. Thank you.
Yeah, I actually think he did very well in that debate, as well as you could possibly expect someone to do with 4-on-1 like that, and with Candace basically being completely dismissive of anything about him. And Charlie was at least trying to engage him on some sort of an even level, where Candace was essentially just trying to belittle him and make it seem like he and completely mischaracterize his arguments and also muddy the water. So yeah, she is not great. So anyway, yeah, and trying to argue like that in front of a bunch of people, not easy at all, especially when they're all against you. That is not a comfortable position to be in at all, I'm sure.